Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening. I'm calling to order or continuing the regular meeting of the Ross-Town Council, Thursday, 12. There is nothing to report out of the closed session. This is the open session, and the first item of the open session is the swearing ceremony for our new police sergeant, Danny Moy. Police Chief Plata.
Come on up. Why don't you stand right? Why don't you stand right there? And you want to have him at the podium? Okay.
Use this mic here. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Danny Moy,
I, Danny Moy,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California.
and the State of California.
Constitution of the State of California.
Sorry, Constitution of the State of California.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance
Of true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California.
and to the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely
I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
that I will and fully
discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
discharge the duties which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council and Town Manager Johnson. I'm a happy guy for a couple of reasons. First of all, to work in this wonderful town, and next of all, during the celebration of Law Enforcement Memorial Week, I'm able to promote a veteran police officer from the town of Ross to the position of sergeant. Just a couple words, and then I'll let you get on with your normal business. But so Danny Moy started with the Ross Police Department in 2005. He's married to his beautiful wife Gina, who's I'm told is very patient with him. He has two daughters. His mother-in-law, who's here, welcome. What I discovered after I promoted him is that he's a Dodger fan, so we'll have to deal with that, but yeah, I know. This 17-year veteran decided to apply for the position of sergeant after a vacated position, so we've been down a sergeant for over a year. I wanted to keep this as fair as possible, so I invited 3 lieutenants from outside of Ross, Santa Fe, Novato, and Central Marin to conduct the test here. And the first thing they said when I walked in the door is, I have a good problem. So I was really proud that he was able to but I knew he could be successful in the testing process. So Danny came out number 1 in our test. And on May 1st, I appointed him as sergeant for the Ross Police Department. So. Traditional law enforcement is a penny of the bat. It almost always goes to their most favorite person in the world, and it just happens to be Gina, his wife. So.
I'm in a close second. Most I want to stab you today.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And congratulations, Sergeant Moy. The next item on our agenda is introduction and welcome to our new employee, Rebecca Markwick, who is our Planning and Building Director. Town Manager Johnson.
Hello. Thank you, Mayor and council members. What a fun evening. We get to do these great things. I would like to introduce our new Planning and Building Director, Rebecca Markwick. After an extensive recruitment, we were fortunate to find Rebecca, who started last week on May 2nd. She has a stellar resume and a very strong connection to Marin County as a longtime resident with experience working in other Marin County cities. She was most recently employed with the City of Belvedere as their senior planner, where she processed many design review applications, worked on several committees, and handled special projects such as the Climate Action Plan and their housing element update, which is currently underway, as is ours. She earned her bachelor's degree in environmental studies from UC Santa Cruz. Does that go banana slugs? Oh. My apologies. That's good because I'm a gaucho. UC Santa Barbara, yes, okay. And her Master of Urban Planning from San Jose State University. I am thrilled to have Rebecca with us, and she certainly hit the ground running, as you will hear in a few minutes, with her brief update on the Housing Element Update project. So welcome, Rebecca. And would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Krista, and good evening, Mayor Robbins and fellow town council members. I am so excited to be working here in the lovely town of Ross. I've had such a warm welcome from all of my colleagues, and I look forward to working together with you and the residents of Ross. So thank you.
So welcome, Rebecca. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is open time for public expression. This is limited to 3 minutes per speaker on items that are not on the agenda. Are there any members of the public in town hall who would like to speak? Yes, go ahead. Come to the microphone, please.
Hi, been a long time. Nice to see you all. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Barbara Call, 8 Redwood Drive. I want to read to you something from the Ross Municipal Code's Vehicle Prohibited, 9.28.160. It's unlawful for any person to operate any motor vehicle in or upon any park, including Ross Common. The term motor vehicle includes any type of vehicle motorized 2- and 3-wheel vehicles. 928.190. Enforcement of rules. The Director of Public Works and subordinates shall diligently enforce the provisions of this chapter. So the deal is that the e-scooters did not exist when this code was adopted, but they're here now. And you might ask yourself, what's the big deal? What difference does it make? Well, the problem is they're very dangerous. They're dangerous because they're fast. They're very fast. They go upwards of 25, 30 miles per hour. They're dangerous because they're driven by children who are not mature, not responsible, not experienced, who love speed. They're also dangerous because they're quiet as a whisper. And if you're walking along the common and one comes up behind you, you do not hear it. I've had it happen where I almost stepped over in front of one that went by me and I went, ah! So they are dangerous. And I am afraid of a proliferation of these vehicles. I'm particularly nervous because as you make the new pathway, you're also making a speedway, because I've seen kids out there racing them as is. And I think I would feel negligent if something bad happens. So the problem is, how do you enforce this rule? Because this is always the difficulty, enforcement. I have an idea that signage would be one start, and a sign that clearly says motorized vehicles are not allowed on the common. And I know you don't want a whole bunch of signs. I mean, it becomes overkill at certain points. So I'm thinking that there are a couple of signs that could be replaced. And one in particular is the green sign that is on Ross Common and Redwood. It's about this big, and it talks about cleats on the common. I mean, it's probably been there 50 years. You could easily replace that sign with a sign that made it very clear that motorized vehicles are not allowed on the common. Another thing would be to reach out to the parents who are buying these vehicles, because these vehicles are expensive. And if the parents knew that kids could not actually ride these vehicles on the common, perhaps they would think twice before they purchased one. I have seen kids on Laurel Grove coming to school on these vehicles going in excess of 20, 25 miles per hour, and I'm like shocked that the parent
Robert,
would buy
try to
them.
wrap it up.
So-
You're at 10 seconds left.
You may already be on top of this, in which case that's super, but on the other hand, I would feel remiss if I didn't bring it to your attention in case you didn't know a code actually existed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any members of the public in town hall who would like to comment during open time? Linda, are there any members of the public online who have raised hands to comment during public expression?
Yes, I'm bringing one of them in. Moeller, I don't know if that's a first name or last name. Go ahead.
All right, I'm trying to get it all set up. Oh, thank you. Well, good evening, Mayor Robbins, council members and staff. My name is David Mahler. I live here in Ross Valley, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the 50 members of the Marin Sonoma Building Electrification Squad. And we are increasingly concerned about our worsening climate crisis and strongly support Ross taking actions to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And the action that I'd like to focus on right now is reducing the use of natural gas, which is made of methane gas, in buildings. This is because use of this fossil gas in buildings, primarily for space and water heating, produces about 1/4 of Marin's greenhouse gas emissions. I'm aware that the County of Marin has started work on an update of its Green Building Code, which was adopted in 2020. And a key focus of the update will be to start ramping down the use of fossil gas in buildings. As I understand it, the county plans to address 2 building categories. For completely new buildings, including residential, multifamily, and commercial, the county is planning to require that they be all electric, including having high-efficiency electric heat pump space and water heaters. For renovations of existing residences, including single and multifamily, the county is planning to require the renovations meet a target energy score using a point system that allows for a flexible range of building measures, including heat pump space and water heaters. In addition, the county is actively supporting and promoting several voluntary measures and incentives to encourage owners of existing homes to install electric heat pump space and water heaters when their gas-fueled models need replacement. The county has reached out to engage each of Marin's cities and towns in developing the updated Green Building Code, with the goal that all 12 Marin jurisdictions adopt the same code provisions effective January 1st, 2023. In fact, Marin County has already conducted 4 meetings with participating jurisdictional staff, and I understand that Ross has participated in some of these meetings. The most recent meeting was just this past Tuesday. So I want to bring this issue and initiative to your attention and request that you ensure that Ross staff actively participate with the other Marin jurisdictions in developing the updated Green Building Code. It's a great opportunity to leverage county staff and resources to help Ross meet its stated climate goals. And with statewide requirements for new buildings to be all electric still years away and increasing development pressure from the regional housing needs allocation, we feel strongly that Ross needs to join with the other Marin jurisdictions in acting now at the local level. We're counting on your support of this important countywide initiative. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Linda, is there anyone else?
There are no raised hands, Mayor.
Thank you. Then we'll move to item 9, the mayor's report. Paramedics are the critical first responders to 911 calls. Measure I on the June 7 ballot is a renewal of the 4-year parcel tax to continue paramedic services for residents in Ross. The current tax is $91.50 per parcel per year. The amount increases by $3 per year. A 2/3 majority is required to renew the tax. Paramedic services are separate from the town of Ross's police and fire services. Small towns don't usually have their own paramedic department. In Ross, 911 calls are answered by the Ross Valley Paramedic Authority, a regional group formed in 1982 to oversee paramedic services for Ross, Kentfield, San Anselmo, Larkspur, Corte Madera, Fairfax, Sleepy Hollow, and some incorporated areas. The paramedics are based here in Ross. For the past 40 years, paramedic services have been largely funded by an annual parcel tax. All of the towns served by the Paramedic Authority will also be voting on the parcel tax renewal, either in June or in November. Paramedics are trained and equipped to provide advanced life-saving care wherever it's needed, 24/7, 365. In essence, they bring the hospital emergency room to the patient. Patients are transported to the emergency room in state-of-the-art ambulance transport units. Patients are not billed for the ambulance transfer. 2/3 of the cost is covered by the Ross Valley Paramedic Authority, and the other 1/3 by private insurance. If a patient doesn't have insurance, or if the insurance reimbursement fails to cover the 1/3 share, patients are billed for the balance. For more information about the Paramedic Authority, to their website. For questions about the Measure I campaign, contact the co-chairs, Julie McMillan, and myself. Thank you. Item 10 is council committee and liaison reports. Are there any committee or liaison reports? Oh, I just have one. It's not really a committee, but there was a communication that's sort of going to be going before the City and County Services Committee about a gun buyback program. And it's one of these programs that, you know, towns are asked to provide funding, but it could also be funded by the county. And so at the moment, we're waiting to hear, Ross is waiting to hear how would the City County Services Committee subcommittee handle this and similar requests. Some towns have gone ahead and donated money to a one-time gun buyback program. Number 11, staff and community reports. Town Manager Krista Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Robbins. A few announcements for you. As Chief Pata mentioned, this week is National Police Week. 2021 was the deadliest year for law enforcement in United States history. I think we can all recognize that law enforcement is a vocation. It requires our police officers to be away from their families, days, nights, and weekends, and holidays. And the potential for danger is always there, even in a town like a small town like Ross. And so I just want to recognize the members of the Ross Police Department and members of the other law enforcement agencies nearby and in our county that are often called upon to assist our police department and the Ross community, and thank them for their service. Let's see, at the request of our Mayor Pro Tem Cool, I'm trying to give you occasional updates about some of the major projects in town that are kind of taking a little bit of time. So we want to keep you updated and the community updated. And so the Public Works Director hosted a kickoff meeting this past week for the initial design phase of the West Ross Undergrounding District project. With the assessment district engineer was there, PG&E staff, AT&T, and Comcast design representatives. The purpose of the meeting was to introduce all of the key points of contact to each other and discuss and identify potential project challenges and project constraints. PG&E began their preliminary design of the undergrounding project earlier this year and has recently begun meeting with our residents to discuss preferred service locations and other design-related issues. The current schedule calls for the construction project to go out to bid in the fall of 2023 and to hold the ballot hearing of the property owners in the spring of 2024. And if the ballot passes, construction would be scheduled to begin in spring of 2025, following the council authorization to issue bonds of the sale. The town will host monthly project meetings with the utility companies and assessment district engineer throughout the project design phases. So we're chugging along on that. Thanks to our Public Works Director for providing me with that update to give to you. So just a reminder that on May 25th, Age Friendly The town, RPOA, Ross Ready, and the Marin Center for Independent Living is putting on an event at the Marin Art and Garden Center. It's going to be held from 9:30 in the morning to 11:30 a.m. The event will focus on disaster and emergency preparedness in the town of Ross, and all ages are welcome. Then that following Saturday, May 28th, is the first annual Wildfire Prevention Festival, and it's going to take place at the Marin Center Fairgrounds, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m., and admission is free. You might have seen that the portable toilet enclosures at Natalie Coffin Green Park have been constructed. I encourage you to check them out. They are very impressive. They're very sturdy and they blend in. They're super nice. Construction on the enclosure for the portable toilets at Frederick Allen Park is about to begin any day now. Big thanks to RPOA for their inspiration and partnership on these projects. Speaking of RPOA, their first of their 3 concert series will be held this coming Saturday, May 14th on the Ross Common, 5:30 p.m., 8:30 p.m., co-sponsored by the town. And the concert will be held on the outdoor Ross School. We hope you can make it. And now for sadder news. I regret to announce that our planner, Matthew Weintraub, his last day is at the end of the month. I'd like to thank Matthew for providing 2.5 years of valuable service to the town. He started work in Ross in September of 2019 and has made significant contributions here. He has ably handled current planning for the department, which can be challenging at times. His focus on current planning also included providing excellent staff support to the ADR and to the town council, as he's about to do this evening. Some highlights in current planning included over 39 approved planning applications, design review for the county's Corte Madera flood risk management project, which I understand was complex, and 16 new accessory dwelling units, which is significant in a town of our size. Most recently, Matthew handled the process to get a well-qualified consultant team on board for the town to start the important housing element update project. And this is just a few highlights, certainly not a comprehensive list of everything he's accomplished. So I want to thank you, Matthew, and best wishes to you in your future endeavors. Okay. Now I'll just turn it over to our new Planning and Building Director, Rebecca Markwick. She's going to give a brief status report to the council about the housing element update project. I want to make sure we utilize these monthly council meetings to keep you and the community up to speed.
Thank you, Town Manager Johnson. Yes, a quick update on the housing element, where we are in the process, and to let you know about a few upcoming events. Part of the housing element process includes having key stakeholder meetings, which are meetings that are structured as informal discussions to elicit candid input on planning issues to get a broad sense of the community. The past 2 weeks, staff has participated in 2 of these meetings with our consultants, Daya and Bhatia, and we have 1 more next week. The first meeting was with a group of local architects where we discussed ADUs, and the second meeting was with the Ross Property Owners Association. Both were very productive meetings. The third meeting will be next week with ADR on May 17th. And please be on the lookout for a survey, which will be a community-wide web-based survey to collect public input on potential housing opportunity sites and key strategies for the housing element update. The survey should be coming out in late June. And lastly, in conjunction with our housing element update, we are also updating our safety element section of the general plan. Diane Bhatia will be attending the disaster preparedness planning event that Town Manager Johnson just mentioned on May 25th at the Marin Art and Garden Center. And at this event, they will have a few different stations set up asking residents questions like, what natural hazard are you most concerned with Ross? We'll use this very interactive community event to help lay the foundation of the safety element. and we hope that you can all attend that event on May 25th. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember McMillan.
I have a question about the May 25th event. Is that being promoted?
They did send out a postcard just this past week. You recall receiving it at your home yet? Okay. I know we reviewed it and,
I'm not that good about getting my mail every day, so
Oh,
it might
okay.
be in my box.
okay. That was my understanding. It was, this is a combined event, so it was I think it might have been Age Friendly that was sending it out. Did you receive it, Mayor Pro Tem?
There was a half page or a full page ad in the IJ today promoting this item. And I'm trying to remember what they're calling it. It's a something stomp.
Ember.
Oh, that's different.
Ember.
Oh, right.
Ember Stomp is for the
That's the May
Marin
28th.
Yeah, that's for the Marin Wildfire Prevention
Oh.
Authority event. Yeah. Where the Marin Master Gardeners will have a Fire Smart demonstration garden, so be sure to attend.
Excellent.
Thank you. Is there any other time updates, Krista?
No, they're not.
Thank you. Is there an update from the Ross Property Owners Association? Online, anyone, Linda?
There is no raised hands, Mayor.
Fine. Item 12 is the consent agenda. Are there any members of the council who would like to pull off any items on the consent agenda for discussion? Councilmember Kircher.
Yes, I'd like to pull off item J, the new parking arrangement, parking enforcement arrangement.
Okay. Are there any members of the public in town hall who would like to pull any items of the consent agenda off for special discussion? And Linda, are there any members of the public online who would like to pull off an item on the consent agenda?
No, Mayor.
Then let's start by discussing item J.
I think we should adopt the consent agenda absent J, and then.
Okay, fine. Then let's, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item J?
So moved.
I'll second it.
All right, let's take the vote. How do you vote, Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
And Councilmember Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Cool?
Aye.
And Mayor Robbins?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
And now let's move to letter J. Town Council authorization of town manager or designee to execute a joint exercise of powers agreement for the processing of citations. Councilmember Kircher, what comments do you have?
First of all, I welcome replacement of the Marin Parking Authority, which was a very frustrating entity that was almost impossible to contact. The office is in Newport Beach. So I think this is a positive step. However, I would just like some clarification as to what role the sheriff department will play, and to the extent they're going to hire a consultant or a vendor to administer this. Is it correct that that's for processing of citations? Or are we talking about some authority which will be writing citations for parking violations?
Good evening, Council Kircher and Mayor and the rest of you. So my understanding is in going over the original mechanism that was in place was adopted in 1982, and that was a joint powers agreement, which was subject to all of the regulations under the Brown Act and public board meetings, audits, and it was a huge amount of work, I guess, for the Marin Parking Authority. The other thing that happened is that since 1982, the California Vehicle Code has changed in a way in dealing with parking citations in a manner that kind of changed the entire landscape of processing of parking citations. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the company Newport Beach is still going to be the vendor for this JEPA. However, we will be dealing with one point of contact, which is a representative from the Sheriff's Department instead of this other bureaucracy. So I hope that helps a little bit. The idea behind it is to reduce this giant structure, and I'm told that may also reduce the fines or make it easier to process citations. And because I know I've had more than a few people tell me they've had some problems dealing with this company. So hopefully this will be it with dealing with the sheriff's department.
Ross has a very complicated parking situation and structure, and it's almost as if every street is kind of its own situation. Some streets, there's parking on one side of the road, but not the other side. Some streets, there's no parking. Other streets, including the one I live on, is very narrow, and everybody on the street has problems when we have construction or whatever. So our preference would be to have local law enforcement that knows our community in charge of this. At the same time, I recognize that the officers here already have many duties and probably don't have time for a lot of this.
Well, the first stop is always okay. It's always okay to come to me first. I've over the last year, I've managed a number of citations that weren't quite right. So the first stop is always okay to come to me. However, I'll probably be the contact for the town to this JEPA, and I'm assured that it's supposed to work better. So we'll see.
And then one other question, we had a discussion, I think at our last council meeting, or maybe it was the budget meeting, something about the parking situation in the town for our public areas and the difficulty sometimes of finding a place to park, and a discussion of, well, perhaps we should consider at some point limitations on the amount of time that you could park. So who would be responsible? Let's assume we did adopt the ordinance. Who would be responsible for enforcing that? Would it be local law enforcement, or would it be this parking authority?
It's local law enforcement.
Is-
Yeah,
okay.
enforces it.
Okay, thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
just want to clarify, one of your first questions was, what's the purpose of this agreement? It's just to process and collect citations.
Right.
The issuance of citations is still done by the Ross Police Department.
Right. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments about item J? And any members of the public, online or otherwise? Is there a motion to approve item J?
Move to approve item J?
Second.
All right, let's take the vote. How do you vote, Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
Councilmember Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Cool?
Aye.
And Mayor Robbins?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Item 13 is an update regarding the Ross Valley Fire Department's draft request for proposals to study, proposal for a study to develop policy options for the fire board surrounding future leadership and governance. Councilmember Cool, we all saw the request for proposals. Is discussion, or are we waiting to see what proposals are submitted?
At last night's meeting of the Ross Valley Fire Department Board, there was a approval of the RFP. It was approved. And so it'll be sent out shortly. I forget exactly the time. But the next step will be receiving responses to the RFP and then evaluating them.
And I think I saw that they expect those to be, the proposals to be submitted by the middle of June. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a
So this
fairly
will go
short
quickly.
time. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is there any discussion or questions from council members? Any comments from members of the public in town hall? Any comment? Oh, sorry, Councilmember McMillan.
I just have a question. I at the schedule, and it looks like the fire board is deciding, it just says return to the board of directors with final options on November 9. I'm just wondering if the Ross Town Council will be asked to provide any input on that decision, or if that's just in the purview of the fire board.
Well, I will, of course, and I assume our other representative, Elizabeth Breckus, would likewise follow whatever directions we are given by the council.
Well, I would love some input if that's possible.
And so for the time being, we will keep this on the agenda in case the fire board has something the night before our meeting that we want to talk about. Is that correct, Beach?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Then let's move on to item 14. A public hearing on planning projects. 1 Ames Avenue, design review, accessory dwelling unit permit, demolition permit and variance, and town council consideration of adoption of resolution number 2247. Town planner Weintraub.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Agenda item 14 is the planning application for 1 Ames Avenue, and I'll be referring to my presentation on the screen. The property is large for the 1 acre district. It's about 1.5 acres. It's a flat lot. It's located in the AE flood zone, so all finished floors are constructed at least a foot above the base flood elevation. It has an existing single-family home, which is shown here. I'm using my mouse to show the location of the existing single-family home, and a detached pool house, which is accessory to the main building, constructed in 1985 with a variance 10 feet from the rear property line. It is accessory to the main building. It's not a second unit, does not qualify for a second unit under our code, does not contain a kitchen or cooking facilities. There are existing nonconformities. I mentioned the pool house was constructed with a variance 10 feet off of the rear property line. The existing garage wing encroaches 3 feet into a 25-foot side yard setback, and there is pool equipment located in enclosures at this corner of the property. And this is Shady Lane here and Ames Avenue here, so it's a corner lot. The project plan proposes some additions to the main residence, including an addition here at the front, some infill additions at the back. Here on the west side, the garage would be reconstructed and moved 3 feet in, so it no longer encroaches into the setback, so it would comply with the 25-foot setback. And then there would be an addition, second-story addition on top of that garage, integrated with the design of the building. Here at the back, there would be no change to this existing pool house other than to modify the exterior elevations and materials consistent with the renovated single-family residence. And in this corner of the property, down here, the existing pool house enclosures would be removed, and a new small pool equipment room would be constructed here, further away from any living spaces or existing residences, closer to the street, and it would occupy a corner of a new accessory dwelling unit, which meets the ministerial standards. So the accessory dwelling unit itself is not part of the discretionary approval request. Oh, and it also proposes, let's see, did I forget something? No, I'll just go on. A landscape renovation as well, and I'll cover that. So here we see the front elevation as it would be renovated, and we see the 2-story addition on top of the existing or the reconstructed garage, which again would be moved 3 feet out to comply with the minimum 25-foot side yard setback. The landscaping between the garage and the west side property line would include 2 rows of 10-foot Eliocarpus, and I believe the project designer can explain further some of the landscaping. In addition to the 25-foot side yard setback on the subject property, the adjacent property at 3 Upper Ames, the existing residence is 107 feet away from the property line, so there'd be actually more than 130-foot separation between the new addition on the garage and the existing residence at 3 Upper Ames, just for some context. In terms of the accessory structure, most of it is a new ADU that meets the standards for ministerial approval. A corner of it, and seen in the side elevation, a corner of it would be a pool equipment room for the relocated pool equipment. The pool equipment room itself would be located 14 feet from the south property line, which is further away than the existing pool equipment.
so further from the residential property to that side, and 12.5 feet from Shady Lane, which is a little closer to the street, which is actually recommended by the ADR group. And that's a comparable location, again, to the existing non-conforming pool equipment enclosure. The landscape plan includes extensive plant screening at the property lines. Privacy fencing along Shady Lane, as recommended, is appropriate by the ADR group for a relatively busy street, and reduced impervious coverage. An adjacent application submitted to the department that doesn't have direct bearing on this project is a lot line adjustment for neighboring properties, and I'll describe that briefly. So this is the current configuration where the property at 3 Upper Ames has a panhandle piece that extends to the south. So currently 3 Upper Ames is the only neighbor to the subject property at 1 Ames. The proposed lot line adjustment would detach the panhandle from 3 Upper Ames and attach it to this property here at 2 DeWitt. So in terms of how that affects this project, assuming that lot line adjustment goes through and it's a ministerial action, there would be a new neighbor to the south, and that neighbor at 2 DeWitt has submitted a letter of support for this project. So the project has been reviewed by the ADR group. The first review occurred on March 15th, and they reviewed an earlier version of this project. At that time, they also took extensive public comments and reviewed information submitted by members of the public. They recommended that the applicant revise the project to provide additional landscaping for the privacy screening at the 3 Upper Ames property, that they provide visual relief at the west side building facade, also facing 3 Upper Ames, that they correct the existing non-conforming garage setback adjacent to 3 Upper Ames, and then in other parts of the property, they recommended avoiding and minimizing setback encroachments for landscape structures, and also raising the parapet wall to screen the rooftop solar panels. The applicant has done all of those things in various ways, and I think they can probably describe best how they responded to the ADR group concerns. But what happened next was they resubmitted a final revised project to the ADR group on April 17th for review. The ADR group recommended that that project be approved as proposed. And they said that it addresses the ADR group's previous comments. They said that the property and the project meets and/or exceeds the design review standards for screening, privacy, and landscaping in terms of the minimum requirements for the code. And that they also supported the setback exception for the relocated pool equipment and enclosure based on the overall project design. So the permits required include a design review permit, which is recommended approval for by the ADR group for various project characteristics that are subject to design review. A demolition permit, even though there's no residential structure being demolished, more than 25% of an exterior is being changed, so demolition permit is required. And a variance to allow for the relocated pool equipment in more or less the same location that it exists today, attached to a new ADU, which is a ministerial permit in nature. In terms of the findings, staff can recommend that all 3 findings for design review can be met, meets the purpose of providing excellent design for Ross. In terms of the detailed standards, we can check off all the boxes, including, as recommended by the ADR group, that landscaping is provided to protect privacy between properties, and there's also sufficient buffer distances between residences, and that it's consistent with the general plan and zoning. In terms of the demolition permit, the project would not remove a historic resource or remove any type of special architectural character. In fact, it would likely improve the architectural character for the town, and again, consistent with general plan and zoning. And in terms of the variance, staff can recommend that the findings can be made based primarily on the fact that there's an existing development pattern and existing pool equipment located in that location, and it would be very expensive, and it would be undue hardship to require that to be completely rerouted to a different part of the property when in fact that is the best location for pool equipment, as far as possible from residential structures and adjacent to the street. Public notice was provided as per the code, 300 feet, and owners in support are listed there, including, as mentioned, the owner of 2 DeWitt Avenue, which would be the new south neighbor if the lot line adjustment goes through. Owners at 3 Upper Ames have submitted verbal and written objections to the project based primarily on concerns about potential visual and privacy impacts, as well as other issues, including concerns about how accessory structures may be used on the property. So in summary, staff recommends approval of the resolution 2247 to approve design review, demolition permit, and variance to construct the project as described in the staff report and as explained and described in the project plans. Staff is available to answer any questions that you may have. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Are there questions for Matthew from council members? Councilmember McMillan.
Thank you, Matthew. I believe we received a letter from the owner of 3 Ames via their attorney complaining about the location of the ADU. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But it's my understanding that the ADU is going to be along the, what did you call it, panhandle that is in the lot line adjustment proceeding to be owned by 2 DeWitt?
That's true.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Are there other questions from council members? I have one, Matthew, and that is the landscape plan that was worked out shows 5 magnolia trees along the southern side. Now, if this lot line adjustment goes through, and if the new owners and the current and the applicants want to change that, can they do that just on their own through, does it have to come through an appeal with a permit or to the council? How would that be arranged if new owners and the applicant wanted to make some changes there?
Thank you, Mayor. So staff would look at that as a change that could be a minor change that could be done administratively through a design review amendment or just through the building permit process. And so that type of landscape change is something that we could certainly do administratively, particularly if it's worked out between property owners. Yeah.
Fine, thank you. Any other questions? So then we will turn it over to the applicant and the applicant's team. The applicant and applicant's team have a total of 15 minutes. You can use some of that time now or all of it now. If you use some of it now, you can use the rest of it after public comment project.
Great, thank you.
So I will start timing.
Good evening, Mayor Robbins, Town Council members. My name is Jared Polsky, and Patrick LaPelch and I are Aaron and Darius' architects. I want to thank Matthew for his very thorough report. In fact, leaves me with not much to say, but I know you've been out to the site, and I trust you've seen the story poles and the existing mature landscaping. And as Matthew described, we've had 2 ADR meetings, the 15th of March and the 17th of April. We made a number of design changes. Let me go through them very quickly. The existing garage sits about 2.5, 3 feet into the 25 side yard setback, and we decided to demolish the garage and move it entirely out of the setback to comply with all the setbacks. At the suggestion of the ADR, we're now showing that the west side of the garage, the 2-story side, would be cedar, which is a little softer than stucco, and we added some windows to break up that mass. The window sills are 6 feet above the floor, so there's no privacy impacts from those windows. We'd previously shown bocce court slightly into the setback. We've taken that out and moved it. There is an existing play structure that is a little bit into the setback, and we're willing to move that out of the setback. We are also following the ADR suggestion to raise the parapet height of what we kids' wing, where the kids' bedrooms are, to hide the solar panels. We redesigned the ADU to move the pool equipment into the building, and it's in a noise reducing enclosure. And we lowered the height of the chimney The ADR thought it was a little bit high, so we lowered the height of the chimney. And as Matthew noted, the existing pool house will continue to be used as Darius's office. No kitchen, it's not a second ADU. At the suggestion of the ADR, Darius, Aaron, and Brad Eagsty, our landscape architect, met with the neighbors, the Conakers, to the west, and Eve Hoagland, their landscape architect. And they tried, Aaron and Darius tried very hard to work with the neighbors to garner their support for the project. They agreed to add more redwood trees at the front of the lot to screen the house from Ames and from the neighbor's driveway, which we had, the landscape plan shows 3 additional redwood trees. They agreed to change the 5 birch trees that they were going to put the south property line to 5 magnolia trees. And as you noted, with now that the property's changed hands, the new owners may want to agree to a different species. They agreed to retain the existing chain link fence, now covered in ivy on the south property line, as the Conakers had requested. They discussed the possibility of adding even more screen planting, even a few larger plants. But unfortunately, there's just no more room for more planting, and they couldn't come to an agreement with the Conakers, who continued to object to the project. At the ADR meeting, the last one, all the members of the ADR clearly approved the design as drawn, without any added landscaping. In fact, the chair of the ADR, Mark Kruchnitz, said specifically that the existing planting exceeds the amount of screen planting that they would normally require for any application. So in summary, we removed all the variance requests. The house, I think, will be barely visible to the westerly neighbors. And I think it'll be a credit to the neighborhood, and I hope you agree with me that this is a house well designed. I know that Aaron and Darius want to say a few words. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. Thank you for having us tonight. You know, we had prepared a longer PowerPoint presentation. Like Jared said, I think Matt did an outstanding job on his report. He stole our thunder, as did Jared. So we're going to save our time for any commentary after public commentary.
Fine.
Thank you.
Are there any comments from members of the public in Town Hall? Let's start in Town Hall. Are there any comments from members of the public online? Linda?
Yes, there are. Let me bring them in. So I brought in Lionel first. Go ahead, Lionel. Lionel, are you there?
So this is Len Rifkind speaking. The order of presentation that we wanted, if possible, was we'd like Eve Hoagland, the landscape architect, to go, then Mr. Conacher, and then I would go after Ms. Hoagland, if that's okay with the mayor.
Let me just clarify, Ben, the timing. As each member of the public, and they each count as an individual member, they can each speak for 3 minutes. Is that correct, Ben?
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, our procedures do make this reference to an appellant, but there's not technically an appellant in this proceeding, so you can provide each member three minutes.
All right.
And with your discretion, you can allow more for if you just so desire.
Just so much. Okay. Go ahead, Lionel.
So
Who did you want to speak first?
I would like Ms. Hoagland, the landscape architect, to speak first, Madam Mayor, if that's okay.
Of course, that's fine.
Is that shades of green that I'm looking at?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, good evening, Mayor Robbins and council members. So I'm the landscape architect for the Conakers, and they are still worried about the privacy and screening. We have a PowerPoint show. Do you have that, Matthew? There. So we can just go quickly through this. So just the two properties and location of their houses. Maybe next. The main, the left one shows a view from the driveway. The main concern is the bedroom windows on the right hand photo that kind of are very large and up in second story. So next. Other photos, but next. These are photos taken from the bedrooms, just, with some of the deciduous leaves coming in already. So obviously this is a bigger problem in the winter. Next. This kind of show the primary site to the bedroom windows from the secondary story and the deck. Next. This is from the south lawn. Next. And what's proposed is these 15-gallon Japanese blueberries. So they are only going to be 3 to 5 foot tall when they go in. So they're very small. So we would propose something bigger there. Next. So I think a large evergreen tree, a magnolia or something, a 48-inch box on the corner of the house would do a lot to kind of stop those primary sight lines into the bedroom. We would also love to get some bigger planted 36-inch box plants along the property line, anything as big as possible. So that would also help. And next. And this just also show the sight lines and how that is the kind of most critical point we have. Next, let me see. And also on the side of the deck, it would be great to have maybe a wood screen or something that is more permanent than the planting. Next. And these are just kind of sizes of shrubs that is possible to get. So, yeah.
So that's 3 minutes. Can you try to wrap it up, please?
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a few more sentences, that's okay.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay. Thank you. And then who is going to come next from your group?
I will. No, I apologize. I'm sorry. Mr. Conacher is next.
So can I go? Mayor Robbins and Council, thank you for the time. I'm not going to take the time to go through the extensive email that I sent to the council members, as Eva has covered the main issues. The one thing I would point out is that at the ADR meeting, there were verbal representations made by the applicant's landscape architect, and regarding a number of different issues that they actually had agreed with, but have not found their way into the plan. And so from my perspective, I would like to ask the council a question around verbal representations that were made, but not explicitly put into the minutes of the ADR meeting, because in subsequent to the ADR meeting, we have been unsuccessful in getting the applicant to formally agree to putting the things that were represented at the meeting into the plan. All of the issues that we really have are relating to privacy, and in particular, as Eva said, the second story addition that looks essentially right into our master bedroom, and causes us issues. As it relates to what Mr. Weintraub described as the panhandle, while there has been a lot line adjustment application made, I would like to ask the question of the mayor or of council or of any of the staff, whether they or anybody can guarantee us that that lot line adjustment is going to go through. Because if nobody can provide an absolute guarantee of that, then I think raising it at this point is frankly completely and totally irrelevant and shouldn't be taken into consideration. And with that, I'll hand it over to Mr. Rifkind.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. My name is Len Rifkind, and our firm represents Lionel Conacher and Joni Day. And so I want to reiterate what Mr. Conacher just said, that about the lot line adjustment. While of course we hope that it occurs, it's no certainty that it will be completed. And the second thing that I want to say is the Conachers certainly want to support their neighbors, the Mozafarians, in their project. And really, we're talking about fairly minor things. We're talking about landscaping. We're talking about making sure the second story deck doesn't have access for line of sights. So basically the two bedrooms are staring at each other. But what I want to focus on for my remarks is regarding the accessory dwelling unit that's proposed in the southeast corner. And I certainly, as do perhaps most people, support ADUs as a great way to increase our housing stock. It's a terrific tool to make that happen. As the council knows, Ross Municipal Code Section 18.42.010 relates to ADUs, but the purpose of ADUs is to increase the overall housing stock. So I request that the council inquire as part of this hearing if the true use of that structure that's only a couple of feet from the pool is for housing, great. But it certainly isn't located in a place that would be conducive to a tenant renting that house if they have to walk across the entire 1.5 acres to get to the far side that's only a couple of feet from the pool. This should not be, this structure shouldn't get a pass as an ADU simply because a label ADU has been put on it. In fact, prior plans for this project have labeled that ADU pool cabana and pool pavilion, and yet we even have another structure called pool house. So I really question whether the actual use of this building is going to be for the intended purpose of increasing housing stock in the town of Ross. If it's not, it shouldn't get the pass of ministerial approval. You shouldn't be putting a 14-foot tall 800 square foot plus building in a required rear yard setback and side yard setback. Think about all the things that are in the required setback on this project. We got this building that's an ADU, another structure that required a variance in 1985. We have a tennis court, and then we get to the pool equipment that everyone says that requires a variance. You get a variance, you got to make findings for a variance, and you get a variance when there's really something really challenging about the property that you can't put it anywhere else. We got a flat 1.5 acre parcel. You don't need to put pool equipment in a required setback. That doesn't seem to make sense. Cost isn't the consideration for granting a variance. It's making a finding because there's some significant topographical or basically topographical feature that requires a variance to put an improvement in another place. So
I'm sorry, that's 3 minutes. So if you can wrap it up soon, please.
Sure. I just finished. So thank you for your patience and courtesy. And that's it for the Conacher presentation. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Linda, are there any other members of the public online who would like to comment on this project?
Let me see. No, Mayor, there is not.
Then would the applicant like to make any additional comments? You still have, of your 15 minutes, 11 left.
Mayor Robbins and Town Council, we don't have any further comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we'll bring discussion to the council level and discuss the merits of the project. Beach, would you like to start?
I'll be happy to. I think it's unfortunate that the Conachers are not here in person to help us to understand this project fully. I visited it and spent some time, looked around, and I have to say that I am not impressed by what I understand to be the two main arguments that are made. One is that the lot line adjustment isn't complete. As I understand it, the Conifers are one of the two parties to that lot line adjustment, and I assume that if that they're going to be in support of it. And I was also not impressed with the argument about the location of the ADU. I don't know the exact distances, but as I understood it, the ADU, there is some lawn behind the ADU, then you come to a tennis court, and then finally you come to the lot line with the Conifers. I don't think that qualifies as pushing the ADU up against the side of the property. I'm generally not in favor of letting a neighbor play a large role in telling the person next door what they should plant where. I do on the other hand, I realize that it is important to protect the privacy of any neighbor. I stood on this property and tried to look at the Conifer house from the back of the applicant's house, and it took me a while even to figure out where the Conifer's house was. And I'm sure that's not the scientific way to decide whether you are impinging on somebody else's property by what you plan to construct. But in view of these facts, and in view of the fact that the ADR, which I think we should, whose judgments I think should give considerable weight to, in consideration of all this, I support the application as it's presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember McMillan, would you like to go next?
Sure. Matthew, you said that the Conifer's house is what, 130 feet away from the garage that's being moved out of the setback?
Yes,
So
more than
that's-
130 feet. It's
Okay.
107 feet away from the property line.
And the representations that were made at the ADR in terms of additional screening, were those adopted in the meeting minutes or agreed to by the applicant?
They were not recommended for adoption by the ADR group. They were not agreed upon by the property owner or the architect who's the applicant of record. There was discussion about different types of screening options by the landscape architect. Again, those were not adopted by the ADR group, and the ADR group actually was very clear that they thought what was presented on plans was sufficient in terms of landscape.
And I believe you also said that the lot line adjustment is ministerial. Is that the word you used?
That's true.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I commend the applicants for all the work that they did and revisions that they made through the ADR process. I think they've gone beyond the call of duty to accommodate desire of the neighbors, and I fully support the application as it stands now. I think moving the play structure is probably unnecessary. I'm not sure what the intent is behind moving the play structure. Matthew, maybe you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, so it's a fairly minor structure, but all structures are subject to the minimum setbacks. And I went back and looked through the permit history, which is included in the staff report. Did not see that there was variance or minor exception granted for the play structure. And so we just wanted to make sure that everything was clear and appropriate when presented to the council.
Okay, great. So I fully support the project.
Councilmember Kircher.
I think as far as the ADU is concerned, I don't really view that as being an issue before the council now. The ministerial approval, and if there's an objection to the ministerial approval of the ADU, I think there's a different route probably to challenge that. But it's really not part of our, what's before the council now or really on the agenda. It's discretionary design review and variance is what's before the council now. In terms of the issue of privacy, I did visit the property and it does appear there is fairly dense foliage there now. As I understand the position of the applicant, it is that there's really not room for anything else there, and there could be objections by the fire marshal. But I think if discretionary, if the ADR is satisfied with the screening as it is now, I would not be inclined to require anything else. That leaves one other matter, which is the privacy concern expressed by the neighbors about the windows that I guess would be facing south from the new second story. The design plans show a planter and privet hedge type plants that would partially screen the view to the west, which is where the neighbor's house is to the west. But I heard the comment today that they would prefer additional screening. It seems to me that what's proposed is adequate. I don't know whether the applicant has considered any additional screening, whether that would be practical. And this is the west view from the balcony, the direct view. The diagram I saw showed 3 privet hedge type plants and a planter on the second story.
I think that's the plan.
Yes. I believe there was a suggestion or the architect indicated they would prefer additional screening. I don't know whether that's been discussed, whether that's something the applicant has considered or would be acceptable. When I say additional screening, I mean of the view to the west from the second story.
I don't know that it's like a time to have a dialogue right now. I mean,
Not appropriate to.
I mean, the plan is before us.
Right.
Dan, can you help?
Yeah,
It's already
so
been
the
discussed.
public hearing has also been closed at this point, so I think at this point, if you need more information, staff can provide that information, but the mayor can reopen public hearing if we want to go down that route, but that's the process.
Okay, I don't think we need to reopen the public hearing. Do you have any other, are you finished
For
with
my
your?
comments,
Okay.
I would, subject to those comments, support the application.
Okay. Councilmember McMillan, did you have another comment?
I was just going to say that I don't think additional screening from the balcony area is necessary. I wouldn't support that modification.
So I certainly understand the questions that the neighbors have about the discussion in the ADR, the verbal representations that were made. I listened to the tape a number of times, and there certainly was like, we're okay with magnolias or we're okay with this, but so it sort of sounded like those were, what were going to be part of the landscape plan, but the ADR didn't put it into the plan. And in speaking after the meeting and listening to the tape with several of the ADR members, they didn't feel that those verbal representations were anything that they had approved. So I do, in the future, probably whoever's, the ADR should make it very clear that if there's a discussion in a meeting, if that's changed the plan at all, that should be clear. But the ADR members I spoke with said that those discussions didn't change the plan to them, and the ADR said they had approving the plan as presented at ADR. So I think there's probably room for clarification in the future, but the current ADR member said we we didn't incorporate that into our plan. We were fine with the plan as presented. So given that, I would say it's the ADR is recommending approval. And we know that additional screening can be requested at any time up to 3 years. And so I think with that kind of backstop, I don't see why I wouldn't support the project as proposed tonight. Are there other comments? Councilmember McMillan.
I just sitting here thinking, there's nothing preventing the Conifers from planting additional screening if they feel additional screening is necessary, correct?
Sure. Right. Other council comments or discussion?
So I would like to make a motion to approve adoption of resolution number 2247.
Second the motion.
Okay, let's take the vote. How do you vote, Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
Councilmember Kircher?
Aye.
And Councilmember Cool?
Aye.
And Mayor Robbins?
Aye.
And the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Now we are at number 15, council correspondence. Did any council members receive correspondence that they would like to share with others? Share with us? All right, number 15B, future council items. Are there any future council items that people would like to add?
I
go for a record, but go ahead.
At our previous meeting, I think we had a discussion about agendizing on a recurring basis the fire district decision, so that if something came up and we didn't have time to agendize it, but it needed some kind of council input or direction, it would be on our agenda.
I think
Is
we're
that
still
still
doing that.
suitable?
I think that's sort of till it's clear that we don't need to have that, then it's staying on the agenda each month. Because, the fire board meets the night before us, and that's not enough time to put it on the agenda. So isn't that correct, Beach? For the time being, we're putting that on our agenda.
That was my understanding.
And then also the exception to the open meeting law that allows us
To do hybrid?
yes.
Yeah,
Ben?
yeah, that passed tonight on your consent, and that'll be a reoccurring item every meeting.
Fine, thank you.
Any other future council items? Then the meeting is adjourned.